Shalom. I'd like to start out by giving all glory, praise, and honor to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Rakak Wadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of the Great Millstone, and Shalom to the elect of Israel. This is Thamayim in Atlanta, and today we're going to go into the spirit of manifest destiny. And so I've got this essay pulled up. It's from American History, from Revolution to Reconstruction and beyond. And it goes into manifest destiny. So we're going to read through this essay, just a bit of it, and we're going to finish down here at this quote. But first, I'd like to read from Ecclesiastes, and this is chapter 8 and verse 9 of the book of Ecclesiastes. It says, "All this have I seen, and applied my heart unto every work that is done under the sun. There is a time wherein one man ruleth over another to his own hurt." And that applies to Esau Edom, and especially with his idea of manifest destiny, which is basically saying that they have a divine right to expand, which in this case being here in America, or aka Babylon the Great, from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast, and that it was God's blessing, as they would say, for them to do this, which they are correct in that Esau being the progenitor of the self-proclaimed white race, and if you remember, Esau's red, they're not white, but he was blessed by his father Isaac with the fatness of the earth. But there's a caveat there: he would get it through his sword, which meant through violence. And so spreading that violence, it's all going to come back on you, which Esau hasn't thought about. There's two sides to manifest destiny. There is them going out, conquering, colonizing, as they like to call it. But there's a point in which they will be conquered, which is fast approaching. They're on their downfall, their decline, and they're going to have all the things that happened to them, or that they did happen to them. As it says in the book of Obadiah, "As thou hast done, it shall be done." And so they didn't really calculate or think all the way to the end of what would happen with them pulling what they pulled, especially on the Israelites being the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. And so we'll start from the top. It says, the components of manifest destiny. The notion of manifest destiny had many components, each serving people in different ways. Manifest destiny reflected both the prides that characterized American nationalism in the mid-19th century and the idealistic vision of social perfection through God and the church. Both fueled much of the reform energy of the time. Individually, the components created separate reasons to conquer new land. Together, they exemplified America's ideological need to dominate from pole to pole. And so they took this and went from the East Coast of America, or Babylon, all the way to the West Coast, conquering and putting down Gad and Reuben all at the same time. It says the religious influence. To some, the manifest destiny doctrine was based on the idea that America had a divine providence, or a right. It had a future that was destined by God to expand its borders with no limit to area or country. All the traveling and expansion were part of the spirit of manifest destiny. A belief that it was God's will that Americans spread over the entire continent and to control and populate the country as they see fit. Many expansionists conceived God as having this power to sustain and guide human destiny. It was the white man's burden to conquer and Christianize the land. And that's something else to look into, which, Lord willing, we get a lesson on that, on the white man's burden, in which they believed they were so superior that they needed to conquer and to educate and Christianize all of the people around them that were not of their same skin color, which they're not white, they are red because the blood shows forth through their skin. So it's, for example, the idea that the Puritan notion of establishing a city on a hill, and that's a reference to Rome, in which this America, or the beasts that we're in, NATO and the EU, it's the reiteration of the Roman Empire, or the revised Roman Empire. As the scripts say, the beast whose deadly wound was healed, that beast being Rome, and this being the healing of it. But the Lord's about to really give them a deadly wound. It says, was eventually secularized into manifest destiny, a sort of materialistic, religious, utopian destiny. And this is utopia. All this chaos and pollution that's here, this is Esau's utopia. This is Esau's kingdom of heaven, as he'd like to think. But it's really just as Trump puts it, a shithole country. Pardon the French. It says, but we're skipping down all the way to this quote at the bottom. It says, God has not been preparing the English-speaking and tectonic peoples for 1,000 years for nothing but vain and idle self-admiration. And I thought that's interesting, the 1,000 years, because they were chained up into the bottomless pit for 1,000 years, and then re-released at the Renaissance to go deceive the nations. And that's exactly what they have done. They've gone around pushing those red images or white images of quote-unquote Jesus and the Father and the angels, basically saying that they are the people, and pushing their doctrine that they have on top of it, which you could call it Renaissance Christianity, as Apostle Tahar does. But they say that the laws are done away with, when in fact they are not, which inherently creates chaos and a do what thou wilt spirit. It's Satanism. It's not actually Christianity, as they like to call it, or it's not what the Bible says. It says, no, he has made us the master organizers of the world to establish system where chaos reigns. And their order is actually chaos. And chaos to them is actually order. Because they've turned everything upside down. It says, he has made us adepts in government that we may administer government among savages and senile peoples. Theodore Roosevelt, John Cabot Lodge, and John Hay, each in turn endorsed with a strong sense of certainty the view that the Anglo-Saxon, or Americans, which they are not the Anglo-Saxons, they are indeed sons of Isaac, but they are not the angelic sons of Isaac. They're the adversary, which is very hard for them to understand. It says, was destined to rule the world. And again, they did have the blessing for the fatness of the earth, but it's a temporary blessing in which there's a manifest destiny part 2, which they are not going to be happy with. It says, such views expressed in the 19th century and in the early 20th century continues to ring true in the minds of many non-Indian property owners. Those Indians, or Native Americans, are actually the tribe of Gad and Reuben. And as it says in Genesis 49, Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last, showing that manifest destiny, showing that two parts of that they got conquered, but Gad is going to rise up at the end of days and get their licks back onto Esau. It says the superiority of the white race, which again, they are red. They're described as red in the Bible. They created whiteness in the 1600s. The first document was in 1681 in Virginia. And you'll hear Elder Malcolm go into that all the time. It says, is the foundation on which the anti-Indian movement organizers and right-wing helpers rest their efforts to dismember Indian tribes. One sec. Salakia. Had to pause it for a second. But yeah, that's that for this article. And I wanted to take a look at this picture right here. And this is this picture is called The Spirit of the Frontier. We actually had to read and research this when I was in elementary school or so. But this is supposedly the essence of Manifest Destiny, and it's depicting Americans moving westward. So we can take a look at this right here, and we will get into the scriptures. And so we'll start out in Genesis 27 and verse 38. And it says, and Esau said unto his father, hast thou but one blessing, my father? And this is after Jacob received the blessing. It says, bless me, even me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth. And that is what Esau has received. That is why you can see things and hear of the spirit of Manifest Destiny. And it's not just the American Edomites that push this around the world. It's all of Idumea. The Europeans had it as the what was called the doctrine of discovery, in which if they found any land that was inhabited and the people that were there weren't actually so-called Christians, then they could take that land and subdue the people, all through the Catholic Church. And so all of Idumea will be held accountable. They're going to all have the second part of Manifest Destiny, or of the doctrine of discovery, turned on their heads, in which they will be conquered and go into slavery. Moving on, and it says, and of the dew of heaven from above, and by thy sword shalt thou live. Modern day sword being the gun, but it's showing that they would do this through violence. And it says, and shalt serve thy brother, Jacob being his brother, and it shall come to pass when thou shalt have dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. And Esau did that. That's what we're living in right now, of Esau having the dominion. But as the scriptures say, 2nd Esdras, Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that follows. And Esau had the blessing, but they've treated it completely wrong, as we were speaking of earlier, with them depicting white Jesus, quote unquote, and the Father and the angels looking like them, that's blasphemy. And they've broken all of the laws within the book. So this is the book of Numbers, chapter 35 and verse 33. It says, "So ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defileth the land, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it." In Esau's manifest destiny, and them pushing westward, and even just coming here from the get-go, they shed massive amounts of blood. And so the other side of that, Manifest Destiny Part 2, or Side B, their blood is going to have to be shed. And the Lord punishes, as he says, on the third or fourth generation. But Esau didn't think that far ahead when they went about doing what they do. Another law they broke, Deuteronomy chapter 37 and verse 17. "Cursed be he that removeth his neighbor's landmark, and all the people shall say, Amen." And Esau went around the entire earth, removing landmarks, renaming the lands he moved, moving some people from here to there, renaming the people, and calling these lands after his own name, as it says in Psalms 49. Their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever. They name their lands after themselves, roughly paraphrasing. One second again. Salakia. But back to the scriptures. This is the book of Micah, chapter 2 and verse 2, because this is Esau's inevitable end for his manifest destiny, pushing that all around the world, not just the Americas, but as we've talked about with the doctrine of discovery. So this is chapter 2, verse 2 of the book of Micah. And this was originally aimed at the southern kingdom, but the Bible is manyfold, and so now it's aimed at the Edomites. It says, "And they covet fields," and it says, "Thou shalt not covet, and take them by violence," through that sword, that blessing which they were given, "and houses, and take them away. So they oppress a man in his house, even a man in his heritage." And are they not the people that consider themselves the people of the Lord? Those small hatters and those red Christian nationalists. They've taken the house of Jacob, or in his stead. It says, "Therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, against this family do I devise an evil being bad times, from which ye shall not remove your necks." So they're not going to be able to talk their way out of this. It says, "Neither shall ye go haughtily, for this time is evil." And the time of Jacob's trouble, which is coming, which is very, very near, is really the time of all the other nations' trouble, and especially Esau's trouble, because it's a time such as never been before. And considering how much violence it took to take this land and for Esau to establish and have the fatness of the earth, there's going to be a lot of violence dealt out to them as this place goes down. As it says in Revelation, that the angel took up a great millstone and said, "And thus with violence shall that great city Babylon fall." Paraphrasing again. It says, "Neither shall you go haughtily, for this time is evil, In that day shall one take up a parable against you, and lament with a doleful lamentation, and say, we be utterly spoiled. He, that being Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, hath changed the portion of my people. How hath he removed it from me, the blessings in which they had? But there, as it says in Deuteronomy, the Lord's going to take all the curses that are on us and place them onto our enemies, with Esau Edom being the head of those enemies. So they are going to get the curses, and they're going to get it double. So they might as well just drink of that cup. They're going to have to. It says, he hath changed the portion of my people. How hath he removed it from me? Turning away, he hath divided our fields. And Esau will have no power or authority ever again within this earth. Because look what they've done with it. They've practically destroyed the earth. They've polluted just about everything, from the earth to our foods to people's minds. They pollute it with these philosophies of the Edomites that have been pushed out here. And it's just, if Yahweh Shai doesn't come back when he is going to come back, there'd be no flesh left to be saved, because they are destructive. And they're literally going to destroy themselves. Gog and Magog, or Russia, they're Edomites as well. And they're going to destroy America and the land of Israel, which is made up of Edomites. They're going to destroy themselves. It's the snake eating its own tail. And they definitely are snakes.